Hi, this is John Loftus, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
Whenever you start looking and applying too much seriousness to these scriptures, you really start running into issues. God made light on day 1, but didn't make anything that produces light until day 4. So it is very complicated. It depends on what you believe. You can go back and look at the text, but hey, when you look at Genesis 1 and 2, they're actually different. In Genesis 1, man was created last. In Genesis 2, he was created second or third or whatever. It's all convoluted and confusing to begin with. But whenever you look at things like this, I could argue that, okay, God did not create the sun. But we know the rest of the universe is older than the sun. And then therefore that text makes sense. God made the universe, and there were other stars out there on the first day. But it wasn't until the 4th day that God then made the sun. So whenever you argue about that kind of text and the obscure nature of it, that's what you're going to get. It is what it is. But an excellent point made by the text is a quote made by Rosalind Franklin, co-discoverer of the DNA double helix. Here's our quote. It says, "I agree that faith is essential to success in life, but I do not accept your definition of faith, i.e. belief in life after death. In my view, all that is necessary for faith is the belief that by doing our best, we shall come nearer to success, and that success in our aims, the improvement of the lot of mankind, present and future, is worth attaining. I maintain that faith in this world is perfectly possible without faith in another world."
The most violent countries on earth are the ones that share borders with countries of a different majority religion. That's interesting. So that's the most violent countries. There is a parallel of highly religious countries adhering to lower rates of human fulfillment, basically, of prosperity and health and general happiness. When they survey those things, human flourishing is the highest among countries and regions that don't adhere to specific religions or that are less religious overall. And America is kind of somewhere in between. It's very, very religious, but it's mostly tolerable of differing opinions. But that across the world right now, that's kind of shifting. There's a sense that, we need to return to some earlier way of being where you only had certain viewpoints and certain types of people and certain belief systems that were visible and adhered to. And all you have to do is ask somebody that didn't adhere to that, and you get some pretty staunch opposition to the idea that we should return to some earlier, quote-unquote, better reality.
L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, was convicted of fraud and sentenced to 4 years in prison. Earlier in life, he was a college dropout, convicted of petty theft, and he was relieved of his command twice while serving in the U.S. Navy.
The moon produces its own light.
The Vatican helped Nazi war criminals escape justice. As early as 1944, high-ranking church leaders began visiting Allied internment camps under the guise of religious instruction. Their true motive was to set up the now infamous rat lines, facilitating the escape of Nazi prisoners to South America. Among the most famous escapees was Franz Stangl, who was responsible for the murder of between 900,000 and 1 million Jews. The Catholic Church issued him a Vatican State passport, which allowed Stengel to pose as a priest and escape to Brazil. He was ultimately arrested in 1967 and extradited to West Germany. Nick does not object to this one because it's a matter of historical record. Under Mussolini in 1938, the fascist government, Italy had adopted something called the Manifesto of Race, a racial law that declared Italians to be racially Aryan, just like their German allies, and banned Jews from certain professions, as well as confiscating some of their property. It also restricted the ability of Jews to marry, as well as to immigrate into Italy. Now, I'll grant that these laws did not come from the Roman Catholic Church, but the Church did go along with it. And several years later, when the Germans had taken power in Rome and were beginning to deport Jews to concentration camps, the Church had an opportunity to speak out against this, and it did not. On October 16th, 1943, the Gestapo rounded up 1,000 Jews in Rome for deportation to Auschwitz. There was some hand-wringing among members of the Church, but their main argument against why the deportation should happen was that, hey guys, we passed a race law in 1938, and that's been keeping the Jews under control. That's been working really well. We don't need to send them to concentration camps. Our racial purity laws are working just fine. I'm not sure that that's really a good look either, quite frankly. Ultimately, it was decided that, they just didn't want the Church looking too sympathetic to the Jews, because that wasn't a good look for the time, I suppose. And so Pope Pius XII said nothing about Jews being rounded up in Rome and sent to Auschwitz and murdered. That is true. That is historical record. The story of Franz Stangl is also true, although it's a bit of a gray area in terms of like how active was the Roman Catholic Church with the rat lines exactly. His passport was issued. It was a Catholic passport. It was done through that, but it was controlled by a guy named Bishop Hudel, who's an Austrian Catholic bishop. He was stationed in Rome. You might have guessed, as an Austrian, not to say that all Austrians were fans of Hitler, but this guy, Hudel, was a huge fan of Hitler. He's a super fan of Hitler and the Nazis. He loved everything that they were doing. He wrote a lot of stuff in support of them. More stuff, quite frankly, than the Vatican was willing to go along with. And so the Vatican kind of sidelined him a bit, but he was still stationed in Rome. He still had his role as a Catholic bishop. So, the Roman Catholic Church was not necessarily explicitly pro-Nazi, but they did have pro-Nazi bishops, at least one. So that's pretty bad too. The idea that you could have Nazi bishops and then just not really do anything about it. During and after the war and before the war. Hudel also was the key person who assisted in the rat lines. There were other Catholics that assisted as well. He was sort of the main guy. He created an entire network to smuggle people out, who included Joseph Mengele from Auschwitz, the doctor from Auschwitz, awful person, as well as Adolf Eichmann, who was the architect of the Holocaust itself. Got them to South America. That is true. That it was Catholics that did that. And there are some accusations. Again, this is not quite as clear as it is for Hudel, but there are some accusations that Pope Pius XII was also, to some degree, a supporter of the rat lines and specifically provided support to the rat lines. Although, again, I'll say that it appears that Hudel's involvement is much more clear than the Pope's. That's not to say it's not possible that the Pope helped. The Pope very well might have helped. Regardless, the entirety of the relationship between the Roman Catholic Church and the Italian fascists, as well as with the Nazis, that whole enterprise, that whole period, that everything that happened throughout that entire period is a completely awful moral blight on the Roman Catholic Church. And there's no excuse for it whatsoever. And it was a good idea for Nick not to comment because there's really nothing to say. There's nothing you can defend there.
Religion can make moral people do immoral things. With religion, intolerance becomes religious liberty. Abuse becomes discipline. Humility, I am broken or fallen, becomes conceit. I have a personal relationship with the creator of the universe. Hate becomes love. Wars, violence, and terrorism become God's will. Rape and torture become therapy. I think the point that I can make here is that this is true. This is arguably true. You don't need religion for these things to happen. You can abuse people. You can be intolerant without religion. You can be abusive without religion. You can turn humility into vanity or narcissism without religion. Hate becomes love. I don't really see that as a bad thing. I'm not really sure why that one's in the list. I would think that's kind of backward. Love becomes hate. You're supposed to love everybody, but then you realize, oh, those people don't believe what I do. And now my love for everybody says, like, everybody except them, you know? And then that becomes, ooh, kill them kind of thing with religion. I get that. So that one little point kind of confused me. Wars, violence, and terrorism become the God's will. And that is true with religion. But again, the point must be made that you don't need religion to have wars, violence, and terrorism. Rape and torture become therapy. This has been the case. Christian weirdos all across the United States have used various things to try harmful ways to correct someone's behavior. Like men wanting to rape lesbians, thinking that once they experience a penis, they will then want a penis because it's not right. It's not natural. God says they're supposed to want a penis, I guess. But then, yes, we've seen this. I don't know so much about as far as other religions, but as far as crazy religious Christians in the United States, we've absolutely seen them use rape and torture as forms of punishment or corrective therapy. That being said, I've got to once again point out that you do not need religion to do that. There's no need. I mean, you don't need. Yeah, their religion is not a requirement. They are often couched together. The circle of people who believe in rape and torture as a therapy and the circle of people who are religious tends to overlap a lot. You don't have to have religion to believe that or to do that. But man, statistically, matter of fact, in most of these things listed in the book, you don't have to have religion to do them. But oddly enough, often when you find these things going on, religion is involved.
It says that jihad means spiritual struggle in Arabic. But in Islam, it also means holy war. Muslim apologetics often refute the fact. But ask yourself this: why would the Quran exempt old and disabled people from carrying out jihad if all it meant was spiritual struggle and not violence as well?
Don't worry about enjoying yourself in this life. This life sucks. You'll have all the fun you want in the next. This is in the Quran 9:38. Okay, this is a huge issue because you have people who believe in an afterlife, and that's fine. It doesn't seem to harm anything, but it does harm something if they're waiting to live the life they want to live and do the things they want to do, and make the changes to humanity they want to make. If they're waiting to do all of that until the afterlife, that means that sometimes religious people don't make this life the one they want it to be. They think that they need to set limits on themselves and maybe not go after these big dreams that they might have. And this is a really big difference between the religious mentality and the non-religious mentality, because atheists really embrace this one life that we believe we have, and it's a really sad reality when you have somebody that spends their entire life doing something they think is right, but is keeping them from really living their best life and their life to the fullest. It's really sad.